Hey everybody, this is Tevo DRC. Welcome. We're going to teach on apostolic theory, Christian ministry apostolic theory. Apostolic means you feel a call, a word from the Lord to birth something. You can do it from your home, you can do it from an office, you can do it as a ministry, media, whatever it is. But you feel the call to begin something, so you're like a spiritual trailblazer. I speak from experience. When I teach the word apostle, it means lowercase letter A, being commissioned to plant a colony by the Lord. Whatever form, whatever race, whatever nation you're doing it, whatever planting of the Lord, it will take work and revelation and a long time and hard times. You will not be the chief apostle unless you are the one that gets the original vision and the original call. So if you're married, your spouse will be on the apostolic team and you will be the apostle. And we're not making this like some highfalutin capital A. I go to the Lord for this personal insight from my own way of cross-body unity, which is like Paul. If you read Paul, mature, emotionally healthy Paul, he had been before an LP controller and shouting people down and persecuting the first church. First church was God's new move, and many times the old move doesn't know any better, or missing it, or they're just mistaken, or they're not nice, and they'll persecute a new move. And I've been there. So we have learned to grow stronger, to really watch ahead and prepare people for, if you go through things like that, we understand, empathize. But we're for the people. We're not angry, but we are, we've got to teach it plain. So if you look at Apostle Paul, contrary to all you've heard with the word apostle, usually it's a capital A, somebody, we're the apostle. I'd been around that in Central Virginia before I left. So we take it with a grain of salt. But this is our version of it. You can have all the ones you want in your background and just see if you need any of this. When I look at Apostle Paul, we know that in his day, he was not great. He didn't know what we know today. He didn't have the point of view that we have the grace to have. Paul was then the off-scouring of the world, the dung apostle, and that's who we are. We are happier with that, because we're not into, some of the mechanics and systems and all these things that are going on. So Apostle Paul, when you want to prove that, you can read his own writings about himself, about it when he describes the ministry offices, the fivefold offices in Ephesians, different places with a capital A, apostle. No, he writes lowercase a, apostle, lowercase p, prophet, lowercase p, pastor, lowercase p, e, evangelist, and so forth. All right, so he was a minister, and he said that he was fashioned into God's ministry, fashioned into it through long, slow process. Just like Noah. Noah is a huge example of the long-term call, which was 125 years of long-suffering and not understanding, people accusing him, people not, thinking he was shiftless and not, wasting time, but he heard God, and that is part of the turf. I speak from experience. So Paul, when you write about Ephesians offices, they're all lowercase letter, even the word bishop, all right? We look at Paul, Galatians 1 and 2, which is Paul's servant leader office, call to that, not thinking, oh, it sounds good, I'm going to do it. No. You have to hear it, or you're going to be out of, really get messed up. Miss it. So Paul writes in Galatians 1 and 2, which is this, we're the same office, all right, trying to explain it. It's an option. If God says, Paul said, I, Paul, am an apostle, not sent out by any one group or any one person, I and the brothers that are with me. When we read into that, we look at first, he uses lowercase letter a, apostle. It also shows he's not bragging. He doesn't want to be famous. It's not a capital A. It is just fact. This is his office. This is what you expect is a turf builder, a turf grower, a turf foundational teaching, correcting, or speaking, or today it could be a business, ministry, whatever. Okay? So the issue is Paul heard the call. He wanted to know what it was, and God said, do this work, and Paul went on his journey, but he had a lot of sifting, shipwrecks, and so forth. If you look at Apostle Paul in Galatians 1, 1 and 2 is what we're modeling as an option. It says Paul was not sent out by any one group. You mean to tell me that even though Paul came after Jesus set up the first 12, minus the first 12 apostles minus Judas, add in Matthias, you mean to tell me Paul didn't need their permission? He wasn't under them? You're right. When we first know the story of Paul, we notice that Paul came later after the first 12 were handpicked and mentored by Jesus. Paul came first to them as the old-timey law, Torah Saul, who was trying to kill the Jews, trying to kill the new church, all right? He was religious right in his own eyes. He was a zealot. He was an accuser, a Pharisee of the first, plus he was really educated. So Paul did his thing, and then one day, God knocked him off his high horse and gave him insight past the religious rules and the do's and don'ts and sacrifices of Levitical law. He gave him a relationship with himself and the Holy Spirit, Book of Acts. He gave him the Holy Spirit. He gave him insight to the world, that it's not all about one kind. It's not all about the Jew and the Gentile. It's for everybody. And Paul started to teach from that point of view and go to the Lord because he was hungry, hungrier than most for more of the Lord. Well, Paul gets saved, gloriously saved, and he's ready to go help the first church. Now, not persecute them, but he's for them, and because he got it. He got it from the inside out. So he goes over there and he meets with Peter and Barnabas, I believe, for 2 weeks. But it doesn't go well. They don't believe him. They don't think he's ready. It doesn't witness to he's a different move. See, this is it. The older move, handpicked and mentored, are sort of, accustomed to seeing it the way they saw it. But now we're teaching it. Paul represented a new leg of the journey, a branch. He was being sent to the Gentiles. Now, this is what happened. So here they were set up in order, not crazy, but in order. And Paul goes to help. They say, no, you're not right. We said, I don't get you, which is how a new move is often treated or misunderstood. So Paul says, this is a point. Paul said in the Bible that he wrote, his part of the Bible, his letters, he said, I did not confer with flesh and blood. They said no, but I did not confer with flesh and blood, and the Holy Spirit sent me to Syria, Damascus, up with the Arabs, okay? So it says, I did not confer with flesh and blood. I did not need to go and get permission from the lords, from the people that were in the gates of the city, so to speak, at the time set up by Jesus. So this is what we got to do. You got to hear God every bit of the way. It's not easy all the time. You don't want to please people, but you want to be respectful. Paul offered. They said no. He went on his own. It's like, hear God. And you get to hear God in this movement. You really do. So Paul prayed. The Lord sent him. He obeyed, and he went up to live not in Jerusalem, but he went in Syria with the Arabs for 14 years. Now, this is my insight. The insight was Paul was sent. He turned out later to be sent as an apostle to the Gentiles, all right? Well, he went up there thinking he was ready, but he didn't know that through the years of his life beforehand, when he was born, he was steeped in the culture of the Torah and in the Jews' tradition, and maybe he had to be sanded and sifted to get all that bias against Gentiles and Arabs, pride, and also so much legalism, and, snapping, I see them, they're committing sin. That's part of the law right there. So Paul was up there, fashioned and made, spun on the potter's wheel for 13 years, just like many people are today. So if you're doing God's work, it takes that. So Paul was up there, and when it was right, when he was, ready, he comes back with the abundance of the revelation, and he prayed in Ephesians 1:17. He said, I pray for all the churches that you would have more of God's Holy Spirit and wisdom and revelation in your knowledge of him, not about him, but being with him over time, prayer, seeking him, getting fellowship, reading the Bible, and all that. God bless you. He loves you. This is Tevo DRC.